Exciting Thursday for me because it's the NCAA tournament, which I view as Christmas morning, essentially. With, I think the greatest sports weekend of the year, but exciting because I get a chance to catch back up with Sam, recap that Rivals camp. Now, a week and a half ago, we were both a little bit sick last week. I had COVID in 2026 kicking my ass, so I got to hear from some friends about how ridiculous they felt that was. 7 years removed from the 19 for which COVID is named, but it's still going around there. It's still beating up people like me, and I guess whoever gave it to me during basketball coverage a couple weeks ago. But I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to talk about some of these Louisiana guys who Sam and company got to see in Houston a week and a half ago, and also look at one of Louisiana's top 2027 prospects, one of the nation's top 2027 prospects who will be on campus at LSU this weekend as more of the spring recruiting action heats up. Sam, how are we doing? You look like you're feeling better. I think I sound like I'm feeling better. I don't know how I look.
You sound great. You look even better. I mean, not to brag, but pull aside a chair for a second. I don't get sick very often. And in fact, I would credit my immune system entirely here for keeping this within the navigational beakers of being able to continue to work. I was going to sleep at 9 p.m. if I could even keep my eyes open. But I was exhausted dealing with so much phlegm in all different parts of my upper respiratory system. Between me and Allison, we were able to keep Noah safe. His immune system is obviously going to be even stronger than his dad's, but what a marathon of not being able to get rid of a sickness that it's hard to get old, Jared. Let's just put it that way. It's hard to get old, but we've had a couple of fun events keeping us going in the meanwhile, and that's what's powered us through.
Yeah, I feel like historically I would get sick maybe once a year, if even. Sometimes would go a couple years, not really get sick. And now I feel like the last couple of years I've gotten sick twice a year. I've already been sick twice this year, which is concerning to me. I don't know how much of that is just unfortunate coincidence, how much of that is getting old, how much of that is the way the aforementioned pandemic changed our lives and kind of quarantined me and probably lessened all of that built up immune system that I had spent a lifetime building by me then not seeing anyone in person for more than half a year or whatever. But in any event, I'm soft now and all these viruses kick my ass and it sucks, but I'm glad to be back talking to you. And let's get into the Rivals camp stuff that, as we promised, we'd come back and recap. And we have a couple of guys that we'll get into more at length, but just overall, how did you feel about the event, the number of Louisiana guys that came out, just how it felt to kind of get into camp mode? Because now camp mode is starting to hit kind of fast and furious here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to get to knock the dust off. I joked with a couple of different players that when it's late February, early March, it's you're knocking the dust off. Whether you've been some people get right to training right when their season ends. Sometimes you got to give your body some time to heal in a lot of instances. Someone like Brajan Melanson, who's playing multiple sports. He's a little bit dinged up from football season into track season. It's just a process, and it's for us as well. So it's been fun to not to also be getting sick. I've been try to get back in shape, Jared, as we know off the air. So we're getting back into shape. We're able to kind of go a couple of hours, run around the field again. So we're getting into it. It's good to be back into this part of the season, and it's picking up quick because all of a sudden we got some big tournaments, big camps are going on, and we're getting closer to football season, which is fun.
I'm really excited to see things picking up for BJ Melanson. He, I think, has been kind of a somewhat under the radar but really talented kid coming out of North Iberville. And as you mentioned, a multi-sport guy. Let's talk about another guy that, as we talk about kind of knocking the dust off and getting into camp mode, we chatted before camp about Trey Martin, and he's someone that I had seen at Louisiana Versailles camp. He had a great day through some of the drills and whatnot. He didn't do the athletic testing at Louisiana Versailles because he was still very much just kind of starting to ramp up and get back into running, and it wasn't going to be necessarily beneficial to him without any kind of prep work to go out there and just kind of cold run a laser 40 in February. At that point in his rebuild for the offseason with his speed work. You guys posted about him coming out of the camp. What did you kind of see from Trey, y'all's newly minted 4-star running back in this 27 class in Louisiana?
Yeah, now a top 10 running back in the country, and I think the arrow is only pointing up for Trey. He tested really well at 5'11", 200 pounds. He had a 40 in the 4.5 range, and I probably had to adjust that, probably a sub 4.5, given the indoor track. Not only that, we know that he's the driving force of that offense. We saw that last season. We've talked about it on the Recruit That Boot. But really seeing how gifted he is as a pass catcher, the ability to make contested catches in the middle of the field, able to get down the seam and separate from defenders. We had a repeat MVP at the running back position, Lathan Wisington, who, like Trey, is a top 10 or 15 back in the country. And Trey Martin, I thought, could have been an MVP as well, and he was very much right in the discussion. He was absolutely prolific. He's a top target for Alabama, for LSU, he stopped at Houston while he was in town for the Rivals camp. He's got suitors all around the country. Ohio State is keeping up with Trey Martin, and I think his stock is only going to grow because even though Jarrett might have been out on him first out there in Winsboro, he is now putting himself on that national radar, and schools are going to want a piece of Trey Martin.
No doubt. He is a fantastic and well-rounded. I think we talked some about this with him previously, but in terms of a running back that can get out there, run some routes, catch the ball, is just comfortable doing a lot of different things at this point. And his production numbers were certainly great during an all-state junior season. But I also think he's just kind of starting to scratch the surface. And so really looking forward to what's ahead for him. You mentioned he was kind of in conversation as a running back MVP candidate there. One guy from Louisiana that you guys did list as a position group candidate or a position group MVP, Jaden Keelan, another guy we've talked about on here. Love him to death, a 28 defensive back from John Curtis, who is as physical as any young defensive back as a wide receiver would, dare to see. What did you guys see from Jaden and just kind of where he is as he continues to develop? What made him an MVP type guy that weekend?
Yeah, I think Jaden's stock is about to blow up, and I probably said that to you this time last year when he was a Rivals Combine invite to the Rivals camp in Dallas, and then punched his ticket to the Sunday Showcase, and did really well as a 2028 with 2027s and 2026s. This year, like I always tell kids, you get to kind of go through the gauntlet and literally, and then more metaphorically of what this camp goes through with the testing and then the competition. And Jaden was up for that challenge in a big way. Him and Prentice Mackey and both were there from John Curtis. They have a fantastic secondary this year. All the buzz in this Houston camp was about how Curtis and North Shore, defending state champions here in Texas, are going to be playing somewhere in Cajun land in a couple of months, and that has me all fired up, Jarrett. But Jaden Keelan was absolutely incredible. A couple of the people at the camp had talked about his frame. He is rocked up, man. He is about 180, 185 pounds and has a fantastic filled out frame at this point. He tested with a 4.37 40, which is absolutely bonkers. He tested 4.4 last year, which got him punched to the elite camp, and he's only continued to improve upon his speed. And most importantly, he was absolutely shadowing guys in coverage. This was some of the best receivers in Texas, from Dallas to Houston and everywhere in between. We had a fantastic showing. Not to brag too much, but we had a fantastic group of seniors, juniors, sophomores, and the underclassmen from all over the state in different parts of Louisiana. And Jaden was arguably the best defensive back in attendance. Obviously, he made a strong enough, compelling case to be the MVP out of a really great group. We're going to talk about another DB who I thought had a really great case as MVP as well. But Jaden Keelan, he's got early offers, Tulane, Ole Miss. We're going to be talking about Jaden Keelan with some SEC and Big Ten and Big 12 offers here in the near future with that speed, size, and athletic ability.
Yeah, I don't have my 28 rankings in front of me at the moment, but I know I've got him really high up there on that list of not just DBs, but Louisiana prospects overall for the state in 2028. And I was trying to find the exact details on that North Shore game too. They're looking at Cajun Field in, does it say what week? Early
I think
season,
it,
obviously.
yeah, I think it's week 1 or week 2. Texas will start a week before New Orleans or
Mhm.
Louisiana, so it might be like a week 1 for for
Curtis,
Curtis and
right.
week 2 for North Shore.
It's definitely going to be one of those games that sometimes we kind of shout out to even just um, fans that aren't specifically attached to a certain school or needing to be at a certain school every week because your kid or nephew or whoever's playing. If you have a little bit of flexibility, that's going to be one of those marquee matchups. Certainly in early September and really for the entire regular season, if folks want to get out there to Cajun Field to go see that one, it's going to be kind of a national level spotlight game with as we mentioned more so on the Louisiana Versalio channel. We mentioned more so from the John Curtis side, but some really talented young players that are going to be playing on Saturdays here pretty soon. You alluded to another DB that we're about to talk about, Jaden Anding, who is someone we've talked about a ton, younger brother of LSU cornerback Aiden Anding. Jaden's really come on as one of the top safeties in this 2027 class, a versatile kid, both in terms of his physicality and his ball skills, helping in run support or in coverage on the football field. Also a part of that Ruston State runner-up run here just in the last week. And so what popped out about Jaden Anding this time around, getting a chance to see him again?
Yeah, we've seen Jaden wear so many different hats for Ruston over the years, and obviously, like you just mentioned, he just finished basketball season just over the weekend. Man, and I said this to a couple of the Ruston kids. I'd hate to be anyone facing the Ruston football or basketball team next year because they are just straight up pissed, and that is going to be fun to watch for all of us at home. But no, Jaden Anning, we've seen him in punt return duties. We've seen him play safety. We've seen him. This is getting to see him kind of playing tight nickel coverage, trying to play some off safety coverage. Seeing him in a more controlled environment. I can't say that I can recall seeing him in one-on-ones, but he was absolutely ferocious. I love the range that Jaden has. We know he tests really well. He also tested in that 4.5 range at safety. But being able to be physical at the line of scrimmage, being able to close ground quickly and turn and run, with some really, really twitchy slot receivers, some bigger slot receivers. We had a funnel of different types of pass catchers, and Jaden was just up for the task over and over again. Like I said, I thought he had a compelling case also to be the DB MVP at Rivals Houston. And he did that again in the middle of basketball season or toward the back end of basketball season. So he's not in football shape. We know that he's very coveted by schools across the country. This is kind of shows you why in the middle of basketball season he's out here blanketing top receivers across the country and stock up for Jaden Anding, one of the best in the country at his position.
We're filming this or whatever at like 10:45 on Thursday morning, and so I'm dealing with all of the slackers like last minute rushes to, hey, what do I need to do to get in this bracket group challenge thing? The last minute text like 10 minutes before tip off. Speaking of some marquee matchups too, and some big venues. I don't even know if everything's been reported yet, but keep an eye on Edna Carr versus Ruston early in the season down in New Orleans, and maybe in a certain building that has the capacity to bring some big crowds. So that's another one to kind of circle on your early calendars for fans looking for some huge matchups with some great talent on both sides. Speaking of that great talent and the Ruston Bearcats in particular, and the Ruston Bearcats multi-sport guys, Ahmad Hudson is one of the headline guys again for Louisiana recruiting news this week. He's fresh off of an absolutely monster performance in the state title game. They fell a little bit short to Zachary, but not for any lack of anything Ahmad was doing, because he had, I think it was 32, 24, and 7 in the championship game and was really trying to will them back on top down the stretch. They just kind of ran out of time there, and Zachary kept making the critical plays to hang on. But Ahmad just released the top 6. Ahmad is going to be back in Baton Rouge this weekend to see the LSU Tigers and their coaching staff that has been hot on him since it was the old coaching staff, and has not really missed a beat here trying to keep up with him and battle Nebraska and others. Talk us through that top 6 and just kind of where things are for Ahmad now as his junior basketball season wraps up and he turns the attention back to the recruiting trail.
Yeah, he's down to 6. He waited till after basketball season. There's a couple of new wrinkles here. We know that LSU and Nebraska are going to be wrestling at the top for the foreseeable future. That's probably something we're not going to see sorted out until close to between July 1st and July 4th when he locks in his decision. It's going to be an NIL battle. Nebraska is ahead from that angle. LSU is going to keep it close, just as they did with Lamar Brown last year with their priority targets. But I can tell you LSU will get him on campus this weekend, and Nebraska will get him on campus next weekend with back-to-back pivotal visits to top two contenders. LSU for sure has been dialing up the heat with Ahmad Hudson over the last few months, making sure that he feels like a priority. Of course, he's a legacy target coming off a sensational football and basketball season. I should add, in addition to that insane stat line you said, I think he had 9 blocks in the state championship game, which is bonkers. A big thing this weekend for Ahmad will be not only sitting down with Lane Kiffin and Joe Cox and Charlie Weiss Jr., who currently is in a group chat with Ahmad and his whole family. We'll be talking about the elephant in the room, about him wanting to play multiple sports in Baton Rouge, which I don't know, between the football state championship and what he just did in Lake Charles, how could you say that any player of Ahmad's caliber shouldn't at least be getting the chance? Like, when there's a big stage, nobody rises to the occasion like Ahmad Hudson. I've never seen anything like it. And given what he's done over the past 4 months, I am so stoked to get back to New Orleans, potentially for that car game, potentially for the state championships if and when they return. He's got some newcomers in this, like Miami and Missouri. Of course, Alex Atkins was his lead recruiter for the Tigers for some time. He's going to try to make some noise with Missouri, who also has a fantastic basketball program. Schools like A&M have always been in that lead group. I think they're right now looking at third, right on the outside of that top 3. And I'd probably, he's always kind of been high on USC, which of course is gaining some traction. Signed a couple who they signed the receiver last year. They're also in a great spot with our boy Javon Vital from Lake Charles College Prep, who could be getting closer and closer to a decision. We'll talk about that maybe next week. But at the end of the day, I think Ahmad Hudson's going to be between LSU and between Nebraska. At this point in the process, even though the teams around them have changed, LSU and Nebraska have stayed true in this race. And these next 2 weeks will be incredibly important as he sifts through these contenders and moves forward towards official visits.
Yeah, USC does continue to try and be more and more of a factor here in LSU again with guys notable. I mean, top prospects the last couple of recruiting classes, top 10 to 15 guys in the state the last couple of recruiting classes they've been able to sign. But it feels like every time that we talk about Ahmad, it's very much LSU, Nebraska, and then the rest trying to kind of crack into that two horse lead to the race. You mentioned, potentially seeing Ahmad in a state championship game again in December. I don't play a lot of favorites in terms of who I hope wins state championships, but I do hope at some point in one of the sports, Ahmad is able to get back over the hump as kind of the star of a Ruston team that's able to do it, because he has been phenomenal to watch and he has laid it all on the line and been such a huge part of his team being in the thick of it, down to the wire in these games. And then we saw firsthand how upset he was to fall short the way that they did in the Dome. And so obviously he's putting everything into that, and it means a great deal to him to have that team success with his Bearcats group. Quite frankly, he deserves it. He's been a phenomenal athlete to watch. You mentioned we'll talk about Javon Vital here soon. Are there any other names, without even necessarily diving into the full details, but just if it sounds like Ahmad is maybe more of this is going to get into June and then maybe we'll get a decision, are there any other guys that you're kind of, your ears are pricked up a little bit, or you're paying a little bit closer attention to the DMs on or whatever that, fans need to make sure to monitor, that maybe there may be some developments, whether it be an upcoming list or someone that just feels like they're kind of getting close and confident about a decision?
Yeah, it probably would be Javon Vital, now at Lake Charles College Prep, coming off of a storied run at Hamilton Christian. Now he's going to play with Aiden Carter, probably have the 2 fastest, most electric, with the prospects in the state on one offense, with the exception, of course, Easton Royal, the heart and soul of the Brother Martin Crusaders in South Louisiana. But No, I think that Javon Vital is he's made a couple of visits. He's been to Houston. He's been to USC. I think that those are the teams out in front. I think LSU and Ole Miss are going to be recruiting Javon Vital into the summer. They'll get him on campus for an official visit potentially. But right now, I have a prediction in for USC. I think that they've kind of closed the gap here. I know that they think Lincoln Riley views him as a really impact offensive playmaker. Much like he views himself, he does a lot more than just play running back or just receiver. He's a difference maker on offense and various roles on the offense, gadget roles, and then also is a dynamic return specialist, which Lincoln Riley has coveted over the years in LA. So I've moved my prediction. It was originally on LSU. He flirted with a decision right before BK and that staff got canned. Now that he's kind of reset the board, the word out of the 337 is that decision could be coming, and Javon Vital's here to make a splash, and that kind of looks like a little bit of Hollywood lights, if you ask me, Jarrett. So my predictions on USC, we'll see what happens over the next few weeks, and we'll see if I need to change that prediction. But right now, I feel pretty good about the Trojans with the playmaker from the boot.
He felt early on like he was going to be one of those guys that, grew up. LSU was the dream school. It's where he wanted to be. And then USC really continued to kind of throw the kitchen sink at him recruiting wise for a long time. And so last summer that, you kind of started to get that sense of, man, USC is very much more a part of this than maybe people would realize. And then obviously LSU was still kind of doing its thing. Javon, really good relationship and respect for, and, kind of on the same page with Frank Wilson and company. And then a lot changed here in Baton Rouge late last calendar year. And so kind of continued to help open that door. But we'll keep an eye on all of that. We'll be talking more about Javon in the coming weeks, more about Ahmad Hudson, more about all these fantastic 2027 and beyond Louisiana prospects. Certainly appreciate Sam's time. And now I'm getting ready to go park in front of 4 days of basketball while I work on stories and whatnot from home. So Sam, thanks again, man.
Of course.
He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jet Roser. This is Louisiana vs. Oils. Recruit that boot. And thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, y'all be well. Happy March Madness.